So another idea here is we talk about storytelling, and there's numerous ways to talk about storytelling. And really, in this talk, I want to really talk about the 5 Ps. They're building blocks to a good story. So this is one way to think about how to build your story and the types of things you need to think about as you build that story. So the 5 Ps are the questions to think about in building your story are people, place, pictures, personnel, and platform. So, who are the people behind it? What's the environment? What's the setting? How can you communicate the message with pictures and visuals? How do you provide a sense of personal? How do you get that human feeling back? Add that human feeling to your presentation. And then, how do you use your platform to reach your audience? So, the 5 Ps, the things to think about as you're putting that story together. So, if we start with people, there are a number of people in your story generally. So you have to introduce yourself. You have to talk about your roles. You want to include your names. We talk about that when we talk about positioning and how you get your presentation started. Your audience. Who are the members of your audience? Who are you presenting to? And again, thinking about that in terms of who you're positioning to, who are the people sitting in the audience? What do they want to hear? How do you build that context for them? The customers and the consumers, who or what personas of customers and the consumers do you have? Who's this case about in terms of that? And then the other big piece that often shows up is the employees. What are the personas of the employees, the potential employees' personas? How do you connect to the organization's culture? How do you connect to the people in the organization? So a beginning in terms of the types of things to think about when you're thinking about how do I start this? Who are the people involved in it? In terms of place, how do you make the story connect to your organization's environment? You want to define that ecosystem. Where does the organization operate? Geographically, culturally, what's the competitive environment? Those types of things. And then you want to connect to the place and the stakeholders. What does this mean to the stakeholders? So that's when we talk about stakeholder analysis being important. I think stakeholder analysis is important in most case competitions. Most of the time when you're starting to look at a solution, you have to think about those stakeholders because they are part of the place. They're also, if we go back to the previous, they're part of the people that you need to think about. Pictures. We've all heard the statement that picture's worth 1,000 words. Ask yourself, how do you convey your message with visuals? So in terms of when they introduced the new CEO of Microsoft in 2014, we got Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates, and the new CEO sitting in that same picture. And that gives a little bit of that story. And then in one of the PowerPoint videos that I talked about, we talked about how do we present the information we're presenting. And in this case, an example of presenting the debt to income ratio in a much more visual way than is traditionally done in a lot of presentations. Making it personal, give your presentation that human feeling, making the organization feel human. Talk about human emotions. We talked about that when you start to introduce this. How do you make those connections? How do you make the audience connect to you both in an emotional way, and how do you make it authentic? Personal is impacted by the details. You need to have those little details so the audience can be impacted by their emotions, by their authenticity, your authenticity as you start to talk about this is what we think our solution is. And then lastly, it's about the platform, using the platform strengths to convey your message. What platform are you using? How do you use that platform most effectively? How do you use your platform most effectively given the rules of the competition if you're in a competition? And how does the time given impact that content? All of these types of things influence in terms of what do you wind up actually presenting? What does the audience see from you when you're standing up there giving that public speech or whatever platform you're on in terms of this is how we make this very effective?